Welcome to Wealth Hustle 247 podcast, your trusted guide to financial literacy, business innovation, and entrepreneurial success. Learn how to grow your wealth, make informed decisions, and turn your ideas into profitable ventures.
Talent gets you paid, but strong connections build true wealth. In this episode, we unpack skills earn, relationships build wealth. Let's get into it.
All right, so let's dive into something I think we all think about. Like at some point, what does it really take to build wealth?
Yeah.
Not just money, right? But a fulfilling life where success feels like it's on your terms.
Right.
We've got this article, Skills Alone Won't Make You Wealthy. And honestly, it's challenging some of my assumptions about the whole like work hard, get rich idea.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's definitely more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
The article highlights how even like incredibly talented people can kind of hit a ceiling
Yeah.
if they're missing certain pieces of the puzzle.
I like that.
Yeah.
Pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
I'm curious what stood out to you when you were reading this.
Well, for me, it was the part about the 5 limitations
Oh, yeah.
of relying just solely on technical skill.
I felt that
Yeah.
they listed things like limited career growth, lack of influence. It's almost like you can be a master of your craft.
Yeah.
But if you can't lead, negotiate, or build relationships, you're kind of stuck.
Yeah.
Have you seen that play out in your work?
Absolutely. I'm thinking of a brilliant engineer I worked with.
Okay.
Technically the best, but he really struggled to present his ideas
Yeah.
in a way that got like buy-in from other people.
Right.
So his influence was very limited
Yeah.
because he hadn't developed those softer skills.
Okay.
And that leads into their next point, weak relationship management. Yeah, you can be a networking whiz, but
Yeah.
if those are just surface level connections,
Yeah.
they won't hold much weight when you need them most.
Right. So it's not just about knowing people. It's
It
about
hurts.
building genuine trust.
Exactly. It's like the article said, your network often determines your net worth.
Mm.
Those deeper relationships become like your sounding board, your source of referrals,
Yeah.
even your support system when things get tough.
Mm-hmm.
That trust is what opens doors to opportunities
Yeah.
that wouldn't exist otherwise.
Okay, so that's a powerful statement.
Yeah.
And the article ties this directly to the idea of emotional intelligence, EQ.
Yes.
I have to admit, this is something I've always struggled with. Can sound a bit fluffy, like just being nice.
Okay.
How would you explain EQ in a way that's practical, especially in the context of wealth building?
Think of it less about being nice and more like having a set of skills that help you navigate the human side of things, like business relationships, even just understanding your own motivations.
Yeah.
The article breaks EQ down into like 4 pillars.
Okay.
Self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, and relationship management.
Okay.
Each one plays a critical role in how you interact with the world and ultimately how you succeed.
So starting with self-awareness.
Yeah.
This is basically understanding your strengths and weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
But how does that translate into actual wealth building?
Okay, well, let's say you're about to like negotiate a big deal.
Okay.
Being self-aware means you recognize your limits, when to push,
Right.
when to compromise, and maybe most importantly, when to walk away prevents you from making those impulsive decisions. That could really hurt you financially.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like having a clear head in like a high-stakes situation.
Exactly.
But what about self-regulation?
Okay.
Isn't that just about like controlling your emotions?
Mm-hmm.
How does that tie into wealth?
It goes beyond just controlling your emotions.
Okay.
It's about channeling them effectively.
Okay.
Imagine you're pitching a business idea to like potential investors.
Right.
Self-regulation allows you to stay calm and collected, even if you're like super nervous.
Yeah.
Helps you present yourself with confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, that's what inspires trust
Okay.
and attracts investment.
I'm starting to see how these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
So being able to manage your emotions, especially under pressure, that's a huge advantage in business.
Absolutely. And then we have social awareness,
Okay.
which is all about understanding other people's feelings and motivations.
Yeah.
This is crucial for building strong relationships. And as we've discussed, those relationships are often the key to unlocking
Yeah.
wealth building opportunities.
It sounds like social awareness is almost like having like a sixth sense for reading people. But how does that translate into something concrete, like landing a big client or securing a loan?
Okay, so let's say you're meeting with a potential client.
Okay.
By being socially aware, you can pick up on their cues, understand their needs,
Right.
and tailor your approach accordingly.
Okay.
You're not just selling them a product or service.
Yeah.
You're building a connection and demonstrating that you genuinely understand
Right.
their challenges and goals. And that's what builds trust and ultimately closes the deal.
I get it.
Yeah.
It's about seeing beyond the surface and truly connecting with people on a deeper level.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the last pillar,
Right.
relationship management.
Right.
I think we've already touched on how crucial relationships are for success.
Mm-hmm.
But how does this pillar differ from just networking?
Think of relationship management as the long game.
Okay.
It's about nurturing those connections over time,
Mm.
adding value, and being someone people can rely on.
Mm-hmm.
It's less about transactional interactions
Okay.
and more about building genuine, mutually beneficial relationships.
So it's not just about what you can get from people, but what you can contribute to their lives.
Exactly. When you consistently demonstrate your value and commitment to the relationship, people are more likely to reciprocate.
Okay.
They'll be there to support you when you need it,
Right.
refer you to opportunities,
Yeah.
and champion your success. It's a two-way street, and those strong relationships become the foundation for long-term wealth building.
Yeah. Okay,
That's
great.
Awesome.
Okay, so we've established that EQ and like strong relationships are crucial for building wealth.
Right.
But it's easy to get lost in the theory, you know?
Yeah.
What are some practical things our listener can start doing today, like to actually strengthen their EQ? It can feel overwhelming. Like, where do you even begin?
You're right. It can feel like this big abstract concept,
Yeah.
but just like building any skill, it starts with small, consistent actions.
Mm-hmm.
One of the simplest yet like most powerful practices is self-reflection. Just taking a few minutes each day
Right.
to pause, check in with yourself, and just notice
Yeah.
your emotional state.
So it's not about forcing a change, but more about becoming aware of those internal patterns.
Precisely. Ask yourself, what's triggering me?
Okay.
What am I feeling good about?
Mm-hmm.
The more aware you become of your emotional landscape,
Right.
the more equipped you'll be to manage those emotions in
Yeah.
a way that serves you, especially in those high-pressure situations.
That reminds me of the article's point about impulse control.
Yes.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
You react in the heat of the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and later you're like, why did I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so common.
Yeah.
In a business context, those impulsive reactions can really cost you. The key is to develop that like pause button.
Mm-hmm.
When you feel those intense emotions rising, take a deep breath,
Yeah.
count to 10.
Okay.
Maybe even step away from the situation if you need to.
I've heard that advice before, but honestly, it's hard to remember in the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Any tips for actually making that a habit?
It takes practice, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
One thing that helped me is to identify my specific triggers.
Mm-hmm.
Once you know what sets you off, you can anticipate those situations
Okay.
and have a plan in place.
Right.
It's like having a pre-rehearsed response
Mm.
instead of just reacting on autopilot.
That's a really good strategy.
Yeah.
I'm already thinking of a few situations where that would be helpful.
Good.
The article also talked about embracing feedback,
Yes.
which can be tough, especially when it's not positive.
Mm-hmm.
How can our listener turn feedback, even the critical kind,
Right.
into an opportunity for growth?
It's a mindset shift.
Mm.
Instead of getting defensive,
Okay.
try to see feedback as valuable data. It might highlight blind spots you weren't aware of,
Yeah.
or challenge beliefs that are holding you back.
Mm-hmm.
The people who genuinely want to see you succeed
Right.
will offer that constructive criticism, and that's gold.
It's like having an outside perspective that can help you course correct.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've tackled some EQ building strategies.
All right.
Let's move on to relationships.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get overwhelmed by the idea of networking.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's all about schmoozing and collecting business cards.
Yeah.
How would you reframe that concept for someone who's maybe a bit introverted
Right.
or just not comfortable with that traditional approach?
Ditch the word networking altogether.
Okay.
Think of it as building genuine connections
Hmm.
with people who share your interests or professional goals.
Right.
You can find those connections anywhere, online communities,
Mhm.
industry events,
Okay.
even just striking up a conversation with someone at a coffee shop.
Right.
It's about finding your tribe.
I like it feels much more approachable.
Yeah.
But how do you go from like casual conversation to a relationship
Right.
that actually supports your goals?
Here's a tip. Focus on giving value
Mm.
before expecting anything in return.
Okay.
Can you offer helpful advice?
Right.
Make a connection?
Mm-hmm.
Or simply be a good listener?
Okay.
When you approach relationships with a generous spirit, you build trust and reciprocity.
Right.
People remember those who genuinely care and contribute to their well-being.
Okay, so be helpful and authentic.
Yeah.
But relationships require effort, right?
Sure.
How do you keep those connections strong without feeling like you're constantly having to reach out or like work the relationship?
Consistency is key, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Gotcha.
It's not about bombarding people with emails or texts.
Right.
Even a simple check-in, a both way message, or sharing an article they might find interesting can go a long way.
Right.
It shows you're thinking of them and invested in the relationship.
Little gestures that show you care. Makes sense.
Yeah,
And the article emphasized trust as like a crucial element.
absolutely.
It's easy to say build trust, but how do you actually do that
Right.
in a way that feels genuine and not forced?
Trust is earned through consistent actions. Be reliable.
Right.
Follow through on your commitments.
Okay.
And show up authentically in every interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Don't overpromise and underdeliver.
Right.
Transparency is also crucial.
Okay.
Be honest about your intentions
Yeah.
and be willing to be vulnerable when appropriate.
So it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly.
That leads nicely into the topic of communication,
Yes.
which can make or break a relationship. The article touched on active listening.
Yeah.
But what does that really mean in practice?
All right.
I feel like we all think we're good listeners, but are we really?
It's easy to get caught up in our own thoughts and agendas, especially when we're in a conversation that's important to us. Active listening means putting aside those distractions
Right.
and truly focusing on what the other person is saying.
Okay.
Pay attention to their body language. Ask clarifying questions. Resist the urge to interrupt
Okay.
or jump in with your own story.
It's like giving them your full presence and attention. That's powerful.
Absolutely.
And speaking of communication skills, the article briefly mentioned negotiation.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people view negotiation as this like adversarial thing,
Okay.
but isn't it more about finding common ground?
Absolutely. Effective negotiation is about understanding both your needs and the other person's needs, or
Yeah.
finding a solution that works for everyone. It's about collaboration, not confrontation.
So how can our listener get better at negotiation? It feels like a skill you either have or you don't.
It's definitely a skill that you can develop just like any other.
Okay.
Start by practicing active listening and empathy. Really try to understand the other person's perspective and what's motivating them.
Okay.
Learn to articulate your own needs clearly and assertively
Right.
without being aggressive.
Okay.
And be willing to compromise, but always know your bottom line.
This is all great advice.
Yeah.
But it can be tough to put into practice if you're surrounded by people who drain your energy or don't support your goals.
Yeah.
How important is it to be mindful of who you're spending your time with,
Right.
especially in the context of wealth building?
It's crucial. Your environment has a massive impact on your mindset,
Right.
motivation,
Yeah.
and ultimately your success.
Right.
Surround yourself with people who believe in you,
Okay.
who challenge you to grow
Mhm.
and celebrate your wins.
Right.
Seek out mentors who can offer guidance and support,
Right.
and connect with those successful individuals who inspire you to reach your full potential.
It's like building your own personal board of advisors.
Exactly.
People who have your best interests at heart. But what about those relationships that aren't so supportive, maybe even toxic?
Right.
How do you navigate those situations?
It's not always easy,
Yeah.
but sometimes you need to create healthy distance from people who drain your energy or hold you back.
Right.
It doesn't have to be dramatic,
Okay.
but be mindful of who you're giving your time and energy to.
Yeah.
Prioritize those relationships that uplift you and support your goals.
That's a powerful reminder. It's not selfish to protect your energy
No.
and focus on the relationships that matter most.
Exactly.
Speaking of growth, the article emphasized the importance of continuous learning.
Absolutely.
It's easy to get comfortable in your routine, but how can our listener cultivate that always be learning mindset, you know?
Curiosity is key.
Okay.
Stay curious about the world, your industry, even things completely outside your comfort zone. Make time for reading,
Right.
attending workshops,
Okay.
listening to podcasts.
Like this one.
Like this one, exactly.
Yes,
The key is to find what resonates with you
Mm-hmm.
and make learning a part of your daily life.
It's like feeding your mind with new information and perspectives.
Yeah.
And I love the article's point about developing an entrepreneurial mindset. It doesn't necessarily mean like starting a business,
Right.
but more about approaching life with that creative problem-solving spirit.
Exactly.
How can our listener cultivate that mindset even if they're not in a traditional entrepreneurial role?
It's about being proactive,
Okay.
resourceful,
Mm-hmm.
and always looking for opportunities to add value.
Mm-hmm.
It could be as simple as identifying a problem in your workplace
Oh, great.
and coming up with a creative solution.
Okay.
Or maybe it's taking on a side project
Mm-hmm.
that allows you to learn new skills
Yeah.
and potentially generate additional income.
So it's about looking for those possibilities instead of waiting for them to come to you.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment,
Okay.
to try new things,
Mm-hmm.
and see what sticks.
Right. Embrace challenges as opportunities for growth.
Okay.
And remember that failure is just a stepping stone to success.
It's about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, right?
Mhm.
Stepping outside that comfort zone is where the real growth happens.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great segue into the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
where we'll explore specific strategies
Mm.
for turning all of this knowledge into tangible wealth-building actions.
I'm excited to get into the practical application.
Yeah, me too.
Stay tuned, listeners, because we're about to connect all the dots
Mm-hmm.
and give you a roadmap for building the life you desire.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into wealth creation. It's time to connect the dots and talk about turning all these insights into tangible results. We've covered emotional intelligence, relationships, and that crucial always be learning mindset. But how do we actually translate that into building a life of abundance and purpose?
It's about bridging the gap between knowledge and action. You know, we've laid the groundwork now, let's build the structure.
Mm.
A concept that's often overlooked in the wealth building conversation is financial literacy.
Yeah, I think people hear financial literacy and they just assume it's about balancing a checkbook or creating a budget.
Yeah.
Which is important, but it feels very basic. How would you explain it in a way that's relevant to someone who's already driven and wants to build real wealth?
It's about understanding the bigger picture of money, how it works, how to make it work for you, and how to create a solid foundation for the future. That involves learning about different asset classes, understanding risk and reward, and developing a long-term investment strategy that aligns with your goals.
So it's like going from being a passenger in your financial life to being the one in the driver's seat,
Exactly.
making informed decisions.
Yes.
But for someone who's maybe not from a finance background, it can feel intimidating. Where do you even start?
There are so many resources available now. Don't be afraid to ask questions, seek guidance from financial advisors, mentors, or even dive into books and online courses. The key is to start somewhere and build that knowledge over time.
The article had this great line about leveraging.
Yeah.
And they weren't just talking about financial leverage, but leveraging your skills,
Right.
relationships, and knowledge to create opportunities. It's like multiplying your efforts, right?
Exactly. You've invested time and energy into developing your expertise, building a network of valuable connections, and expanding your understanding of the world. Now it's time to put those assets to work in a strategic way.
So instead of just working hard, we're thinking smarter about how we can amplify our impact. How would you suggest someone starts thinking about leverage in a practical way?
Ask yourself these questions. How can I use my skills to solve problems, create value, or generate income?
Mm-hmm.
How can I leverage my relationships to open doors, collaborate on projects, or gain access to new markets? And how can I share my knowledge to mentor others, build a platform for my ideas, or create a ripple effect?
I love those questions. It's like shifting from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, seeing the possibilities that are already there. And speaking of abundance, the article also mentioned the importance of multiple income streams. It feels like that's becoming more and more crucial in today's world.
Absolutely. Gone are the days of relying solely on a single paycheck. Diversifying your income sources provides financial stability, flexibility,
Right.
and the freedom to pursue opportunities that align with your passions.
So what are some practical ways someone can start creating those additional income streams? It feels like everyone's talking about side hustles, but it can be hard to know where to focus your energy.
It starts with identifying your strengths and passions.
Okay.
What are you good at?
Well-
What do you enjoy doing? Then explore how those skills and interests can translate into income-generating opportunities. It could be starting a side business, freelancing, investing in real estate,
Right.
or even creating passive income streams through online courses or digital products.
It's exciting to think about the possibilities, and I think our conversation about relationships comes into play here as well. Those connections can often lead to unexpected opportunities.
Absolutely. Don't underestimate the power of your network. Share your ideas, collaborate on projects, and support each other's ventures. The collective wisdom and resources within your network can be a game changer.
I think we've given our listener a lot to think about. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to mindset. The article emphasized cultivating an internal environment that supports success. How would you advise someone to develop that unshakable belief in themselves and their ability to achieve their goals?
It starts with recognizing and challenging those limiting beliefs that might be holding you back. We all have them, those inner voices that tell us we're not good enough, smart enough, or capable enough. Start paying attention to those thoughts and consciously replace them with positive affirmations.
So it's about being mindful of that inner dialogue
Yeah.
and making a conscious choice to focus on the positive.
Exactly. And surround yourself with people who believe in you, who support your vision, and who challenge you to grow. Their energy and encouragement can be incredibly empowering.
That's a great point. Your environment can either fuel your fire or extinguish it. Choose wisely who you allow into your inner circle. Before we sign off, I wanted to touch on something that really resonated with me from the article. It's not just about building wealth for yourself, it's about making a positive impact on the world.
I couldn't agree more. True wealth encompasses financial abundance, but it also extends to the richness of our relationships, our contributions to society, and the legacy we leave behind.
So as our listener embarks on this journey of wealth creation, what's the one piece of advice you'd leave them with?
Never stop learning, growing, and evolving. Embrace challenges as opportunities for growth. Believe in your ability to achieve your goals, and never underestimate the power of human connection. And most importantly, use your wealth and influence to make a positive impact on the world.
What a fantastic way to wrap up this deep dive. I hope our listener feels inspired and empowered to take action.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you and our listeners. Remember, the journey of wealth creation is a marathon, not a sprint. Enjoy the process, celebrate your wins, and never give up on your dreams.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of wealth creation. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving for a life of abundance and purpose.
That's it for today's episode of Wealth Hustle 247. Be sure to follow, like, comment, and share with others. Keep pushing toward your goals, and we'll see you in the next episode.